appropriate because they're just not there being represented. But if there was someone there from that group, then we would have to kind of watch the way we speak. And that is just simple human nature. If Muslims aren't being represented on every level of government and every level of the country, then we're always going to have this problem. So part of the solution for this system is that myself and my younger brothers and sisters who are kind of coming up in life and choosing professions, that they get involved in how the country actually works. Put yourself in a position where you're representing yourself and representing the people who are similar to you so that your voice is heard. And once that happens, the conversation will start to shift. And it may sound like that this method or this way of doing it doesn't carry a lot of planning, but it really is the most effective of all. People who live in closed societies and refuse to participate on a larger scale will continue to be misunderstood by people around them. Once we get a bit more involved, things will change, and that's already happening now. Alhamdulillah, looking at like I work at a hospital, and if you knew the percentage of Muslims in hospitals, doctors, nurses, and staff is actually a bit concerning for me because I don't see them elsewhere. I don't understand how we have so many Muslim doctors, nurses, staff, but they're not a part. It really it's insane. Like the amount of them. When I'm walking around, like you're a Muhammad, I can see it like in your eyes. You're either a Muhammad or an Ahmed. I could swear on it. And so we actually do exist, but we tend as Muslims not to really put ourselves out there. We don't tend to represent our deen. We don't speak up for ourselves. We don't actually make sure that the conversation is keeping in its mind the conversation from whoever's having it, that we are here and we have our certain ways of doing things. And unfortunately, still that in most institutions, like Jumu'ah is not something that people take care of. So a lot of people don't, they're actually not ready or not comfortable asking for the hour or two to go and pray Jumu'ah, even though it's a fard in your deen and you actually have the civil right to ask for it. And no one can discriminate against you, but we don't. Most people just, either fix up that once they're senior, they work their schedule so they can come to Jumu'ah, but everyone else doesn't. And schools don't respect that, and university. So it's not really something that we've made sure. Why? Even though if you go to UWO or go to Fanshawe and you just stand there and just count how many Muslim people are walking back and forth, you'd think you're in an Arab country somewhere. Why can't we? It's just we don't seem to want to put ourselves out there. And there is some hesitancy. That's understood from Muslims. When you're in a minority, you're always a bit hesitant. Do I express myself, or do I just keep my head low under the radar and just keep getting through what I want to get through? And that's something that has to change from all of us. And I know that the next generation is different. But I sit with younger individuals and I speak to them and I listen to them, and they're much more courageous and brave than I am. I'm guilty of this just as much as anyone else. I just want to get through the day. I don't want to stir any controversy, but they're much more brave, and we have to support them so that they do that. So that's one side of things. Wallahu a'lam. The other part is actively within our organization and institutions, we actively trying a bit harder to educate the general public about our deen. Making sure that every institution has a part of its annual or 5-year plan, educational plan, to actually talk about Islam to those who don't know much about it, in ways that are effective. The old traditional way of knocking on people's doors with books or standing outside with a couple of peeps don't work anymore. People don't respond to that. So we have to think of something else. That's been tried. It's not as effective. But coming up with methods where we can actually be more welcoming. Let the people who don't know much about Islam come and learn about it. Let's take time to actually make sure that people understand that this is a welcoming area. Come and learn. Come and sit and listen. Be a part, figure out who we are. Most people are very hesitant to do that. I mean, people drive up and down Oxford all the time. What's the percentage of people who actually try and come into the masjid and take it? No one, very, very few. I'm talking in a percentage it's not even tangible or countable. That can change when we actually put within our own plans, long-term plans or short-term plans, educating and putting that out there. And to be honest, the younger generation is very good at that. And they have the language and they have the articulation. What they do require is just some aid, some support. They just need some teaching from a narrative from us that allows them to express who they are openly, and people will be much more accepting of it. I have this all the time. Like where I work, people will ask, where's your name from? Or who are you, where you come from? And when you talk about things, you'll find out most people don't want to be hateful. And people who do have bad opinions, they just have it based on the fact that that's what they were told. That's what the media put out for 15, 20 years. We are living the aftermath of maybe 30 to 40 years of just the media picturing us or portraying us as people who are savages and don't. It's the reality. If you watched any form of cinema or theater in the last 30 years, you know that's how we've always been played, and that's what the news goes out like. Whether we like it or not, that's been the reality. If that's going to change, well, then we have to be more. We have to start voicing who we are a bit more to the general public, so that they actually listen to us. And then the third part, which I won't talk about because I know inshallah the sisters beside me will talk about it a bit more, is helping the younger individuals in our society understand why it is that these things have happened and why they are still happening, and support them, because there's a lot of fear that comes with that. I recall after the Afzal family, rahmatullah alayhim ajma'een, may Allah have mercy inshallah upon all of them and all the victims who passed away. Ameen. When that occurred, like I would get texted almost daily from different individuals, just students that I had taught over the years. Some people I didn't even remember who they were anymore. From my own wife and sister-in-law, my children, being scared to get on the street and walk with a hijab on. And this is a part of the struggle that sometimes we overlook within our own society. We get really focused on, the government's not doing this and that's not happening and this, but we forget that we actually need to focus internally a little bit and help people understand things, and help them deal and cope with what occurred. And then motivate them to be advocates of a better outcome, inshallah, in the long run. And I know that we do have the resources, and we have the expertise, and we have the representation. We just need, I think, a little bit more courage, a little bit more motivation and encouragement amongst each other to actually start vocalizing and voicing our concerns and representing ourselves where we need to be represented, whether it's politically, whether it's educationally, whether it's commercially and media. We don't. These are forums and fields that we're not really there, and until we are there, people will not know who we are, and they'll continue to fear us. And that's something that we do have in our hands, the ability to actually start making change. We can complain about this as much as we like and blame. I love doing that. It's really easy. There's a lot of groups to blame of why things have happened the way they've happened over the years. But I'd rather figure out some steps that are practical that can actually change the outcome, and at least feel that we've done something, and that the lives of these people, rahmatullah alayhim ajma'een, any of us, it could have been any of us. We all come pray in masajid, and who passed away doesn't go in vain, and that it actually sparks within our own society some degree of advocacy and activism that allows us to change, inshallah, the general outcome. I know a lot of what I said is probably just general gibberish that has not really translated into anything practical, but really, I think if we just start this conversation a bit more often, and we listen to those who are concerned about this a bit more often, and we put within our own plans an aspect of combating this problem, then we will see change within a very short period of time. These change for these type of problems don't take forever to actually occur, but there's a lack, I think, of. Even today, look, you can kind of figure out where we are with this problem just by looking around you. There's still a long way for us to go, even internally as Muslims, to make sure that we actually have the interest in the issue. This is something that we feel passionately about, and we feel we can change. A lot of people don't come to these things not because they don't care about it. They just don't believe that they can actually make a difference, and that's something I think we can actually have a positive effect on. I think that's. And with that, subhanakallah bihamdik, thank you for allowing me to talk about this issue. I think I will end with a quick dua for the deceased. Allahumma aghfir lahum warhamhum وعافهم واعف عنهم اللهم أكرم نزلهم ووسع مدخلهم اللهم جاف الأرض عن جنبيهم وبرد عليهم تربتهم وارزق أهلهم من بعدهم الصبر والسلوان والهمنا يا ربنا رشدنا إلى ما تحبه وترضاه وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Adnan. Thank you. I think you should not say that it's. What did you say? It was really. Yes, this is very beautiful and very pertinent, and alhamdulillah, barakallah fi. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. Next is Sister Alia Badri. She is a mental health worker here in the community with the Muslim Resource Center. He has worked with our local masjid institution and particularly the girls who were very closely and very deeply affected by the Afzal family's horrific passing. and she has done an excellent job with them. She is here to share her perspective on this from a mental health aspect. Sister Aliyah, please take it away. Oh, you just gotta put it closer to your mouth. Yeah.
This, pull it a little. How about now? Assalamu alaikum to you all, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you and to represent Muslim Resource Center. I've made a few notes so I can just refresh my mind every once in a while about what I want to say exactly, so I don't go off. As the Sheikh has just eloquently said, and as I said, it's a hard act to follow, but being Muslim all around the world, in the non-Muslim world particularly, we're faced by a few losses. After leaving our countries of origin at later ages, such as myself, and being confronted by wholehearted hostility at times is something which is very difficult to fathom. And so what I want to talk about is not only the ways that different generations feel being Muslim in a non-Muslim country. So the feelings of being alienated and possibly discriminated against, and possibly racism, and being shunned, and having feelings of discomfort generally. And the younger generation who possibly have lived here longer, maybe 10, 15 years, have been born here, are now in university. So these two particular groups would feel a lot different than their parents. And this generational, if you want to call it a generational gap, leads to a generational gap in communication as well. And it is in that communication where there's this gray zone of not being able to either talk to the parent, having the confidence enough to talk to somebody outside the house. And it is in that gray area where community organizations, such as the Muslim Resource Center and the Mosque, would try to fill. And in this, commemorating this particular incident and putting in mind the Afdal family and other families around the world, in the United Kingdom, for example, in the United States, for example. So places have had experiences in working within these gray zones. I can go on and talk about what grief looks like, and what hostility looks like, and what mental health or mental illness looks like, and depression, and anxiety and worry, and all the other feelings that come about because of having these microaggressions, and you worrying about perhaps having to have an experience. So if you haven't had an experience, but your neighbor has, or your best friend has, or you've heard somebody that has had, then this it builds into yourself that kind of apprehension and worry and anxiety. And in that, we can help. That's the bottom line, I think, is that places, there are opportunities within the London Muslim community organizations for us to talk openly and safely within groups like Sh Aarij just said. We try to work with a few young ladies in conversation circles, and we didn't have many of them, but I hope they were sort of okay in bringing up and out some kind of bonding and emotional bonding that can happen. And what I'm trying to say is that these opportunities are available. And I do want to publicize that there are 2 programs within the Muslim Resource Center, other than the counseling that actually happens inside the center. One of them is called Penny Appeal. And the Penny Appeal is a fund that has culturally sensitive psychologists and psychiatrists and social workers. And they do offer, they are many, there is a pool. And all you have to do really is come and ask for it. That's all you've got to do, is come and knock at the door and say, Penny Appeal. And, you know, we kind of hook you up with somebody who can help. I know that the London community, I've been here for a short while. I was here when the incident did happen, and I do know that the London community is in a place where we are now mourning, I think. The initial shock has subsided, and all that it entails, and the grief is fizzling away. But I think the mourning, we are in a mourning phase, and it is there where if it goes on for years, it will fester. It will fester, and it will cause the person who is feeling it tremendous guilt first, and a strew of other emotions. So I think what I'm trying to say here is that please do reach out to the available resources that London or Muslim organizations such as the Muslim Resource Center has. It has these, and with the school and with the mosque, and taqwa, and so on and so on. So the partnership and the networking between these organizations and getting the word out there that these resources are available. I could go on and talk about traumatic stress, and, you know, all the nitty-gritties of having some kind of mental dysfunction. But I don't think this is what's needed at this point. I think what's needed at this point is to say, as Sheikh Adnan just said, we need practical steps. And I am now advocating for these practical steps with the mosque and the other mosques around London, the Penny Appeal, the Strong Together program. All of these are available. They're there. And I think as Sheikh Aarij or Sheikh Adnan just said, if we don't tap on these resources and make ourselves visible in these places, if you come and you knock on Sheikh Aarij's door and say, yeah, Sheikhana, I need help. Yeah, I just heard about, or is there, then this partnership and networking is available. So come to it, please. I think I've advocated for that quite well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Sister Alia. And it's really important that we reiterate the fact that the help is available in many ways, and many organizations, and here specifically at the mosque, the help being available in the form of access to myself. I'm not a mental health worker, but I can provide whatever spiritual care or just an ear for you to to talk to. And then we do have other programs and other resources that we try to partner with MRC, and we try to partner with other institutions. And if it's not within our scope, we will tell you it's not within our scope. We will hopefully, be able to direct you to something that would fall more in line with what you need. Like there was once a case where a person messaged me about someone is suicidal. I said, well, we can't handle that in person here. We can't handle that in-house. We don't have the expertise or the resources. And we were able to find, in the community, resources to help that individual. The point being that it's important to get help. This is something that we should not stigmatize, and thank you, Sister Alia, for that. I'm going to turn it over to Sister Zeba. Sister Zeba is on the board of directors of the London Mosque, and she is, mashallah, needs no introduction. She's going to talk about the action against Islamophobia from a community perspective, and she also has something special to share about that painting right there that you see, which we'll get to as well. Sister Zeba, if you can put the mic a little closer to you, that would be perfect. Yeah.
It's okay? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Well, I mean, I'm speaking for the behalf of people, but can you all hear her? Yes? All right, thank you.
So I'll just start off by giving a brief explanation of the artwork that you see right here on my left side. So this is an 18 by 18 mosaic called Light into the Dark, and it's a tribute to the Afzal family. And this was created by Jan Neville. She's a retired teacher and a visual artist. And here's a description that she provided for us. The piece of art is made from nearly 3,000 pieces cut from photographs of the flowers and tributes left by members of our community at the site of this tragedy and at the mosque. The broken pieces of the pictures are reformed into a fractured but living tree with deep roots, ringed in concentric circles that link the earth and sky and the universe beyond. The green tree, a symbol of life, with its fallen leaves nurturing the soil and enriching future growth. Just as scholarships already established in their names will continue their legacies. The blue sky and water, a color of hope, a hope that this violence may be eclipsed by love and by compassion, allowing space for healing. And the yellow sun is warmth, brightening the sky, returning light to the darkened world, and the purple as Yumna's favorite color. May this piece contribute the continuing mosaic of their lives and help us all remember the gifts they shared before their lives were cut short. We who remember them turn to hope, to healing, and to the potential for goodness to prevail. From Jan. So thank you so much, Jan, for this piece. So I will begin my portion, and I hope I can do a little bit of justice to it. I thank Sister Alia and Sheikh Adnan for their words of wisdom and their practical steps. So I will begin. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. I say this prayer to begin in the name of the Almighty God and to make a supplication to be helped with my speech. Okay. So again, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you all. I'm here as a community member and as a representative of the board of the London Muslim Mosque. I belong to the Muslim community, the Pakistani community, and of course, the Canadian community. Before I begin, I would just like to do a very small part in acknowledging the land we're on to help bring awareness of the indigenous peoples that have previously been erased from a historical narrative. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Arawandron, Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, and Lenape peoples who have long-standing relationships to the land, water, and region of southwestern Ontario. The local First Nation communities of this area include Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation. And so I begin my portion by saying that we have been on guard for a long time against Islamophobia. And as we already have heard by Sheikh Adnan, Islamophobia is described as the irrational fear or hatred of Muslims that leads to discrimination or acts of harassment or violence. The concept of Islamophobia has been in presence for a long time. Quickly, some interesting history. The negative stereotyping and assumptions have historically been present. Edward Said's theory on Orientalism, which was published in the 70s, speaks of the West's negative perception of Muslims. In 1997, a report was published by the Runnymede Trust which is a race equality think tank in the UK, which brought forth the term Islamophobia. Now, reflecting on immigration policy in Canada, prior to the 60s, immigration was limited and opened up to Europeans and Southern Europeans. The arrival of Muslims onto North American soil goes back to the late 1600s with the slave trade of forced migration from West Africa. In 1931, a small number of Muslims from Lebanese and Syrian backgrounds are recorded. And then in the late 60s, Canada replaced its country of origin immigration policy with a point system where we saw more individuals from South Asia, South America, Africa coming in. Multiculturalism policies were adopted in the very early 80s. To understand the concept of immigration at the core, which I find interesting and I just want to share here, is that the fertility rate in Canada is below the replacement. So currently it's at 1.4. A number of 2.1 is required to ensure population growth. Population growth supports the economy. And so this was a brief review of minorities within the Canadian landscape to provide some thoughts on where we are at this moment in time, so there's some context. I'm going to now reflect back on a moment which for me at a personal level, and I'm sure for many other people, where I realized where there was no one but ourselves, and we were responsible for trying to undo Islamophobia. I will go back to 2001, precisely the date, September 11th, where North America faced a horrible crime, an act of terrorism. This brought us the war on terror. At that time, there was a fear of Muslims by the general population and a fear by Muslims of outwardly hate from verbal, physical attacks, discrimination, implicit bias. At that time, I was a young mother of 3 children with a caregiver to an elderly mother-in-law, and I was living in Regina, Saskatchewan. And the day of the attack, there was uncertainty in the air, and the thoughts that were racing through everyone's minds were a fear of the attack, confusion, worry about lives lost, worry about our safety as a nation. And as the news slowly started coming in regarding details of the perpetrators, there was a deep sinking feeling of what Muslims were to face. And that was the case. At that time, there were 2 major national organizations where people could find some support and guidance from. There was CARICAN, Canadian Council for American Islamic Relations, and the Canadian Islamic Congress, CIC. And CARICAN then became National Council of Canadian Muslims, who we are very fortunate to have, who are actively engaged in advocating for the rights of Muslims and other minorities to undo some of the damage that has taken place over the years. If there was an irrational fear of Muslims, it was intensified due to the political climate, around-the-clock coverage where we could find ongoing analysis, profiling that only made one's next-door Muslim neighbor appear all the more suspicious. Now, the case has been when a criminal act takes place by someone who is seen as a Muslim, we all become responsible for that criminal behavior. Assumptions are quickly made that we are flawed inherently, we must prove ourselves, and that we have to prove that we are good like everyone else. We have over the past 2 decades condemned many criminal acts that were perpetrated by supposed Muslims. But with all other 90% of crimes, do we ask those groups to come forward and take responsibility? And there certainly has not been equity in the system. We must analyze through a critical lens, examine coverage of news, wording in media articles, examine what is being highlighted, what is being left out, examine legislation for gaps, look at data, at the representational proportions, conduct qualitative, quantitative analyses, try to understand where the systemic flaws are. Why and how hate can mobilize from an emotion to a massacre. 20 to 10 years ago, with the gaps in understanding diversity, inclusion, and anti-oppression strategies that we see today, the only methods to counter the misconceptions and negative stereotypes, stereotypic typification was through grassroots efforts of engagement with the larger community. Now with social media and the ability to mobilize, that's something positive, but then from the negative side, there are trolls, anonymity, and it's easier to support fringe thoughts and emotions. As the work of diversity and inclusion specialists continues, it is only attempting to catch up to the polarization that exists. We did not know what the future was to entail then. We did not know there would be terrible attacks. Saint Foy, a suburb in Quebec City, where the Islamic Cultural Center of Quebec City is. In 2017, on this night, while the congregation consisting of 65 worshipers of men, women, and children were getting ready for Isha prayer, a young man with violent plans was heading to the mosque. We lost Ibrahim Abari, Mamadou Tamu Bari, Khalid Belkacemi, Abdul Karim Hassan, Asadin Sufyan, and Abu Bakr Thapti, who are fathers, sons, husbands, brothers, and community members. Sorry, I didn't expect this to happen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them Jannatul Firdaus and grant their families, the survivors who are still struggling with their health, friends, all of them health, comfort, peace, and mind. Ameen. Reviewing documentaries, reading articles, applying empathy to what those worshipers endured was a difficult process, you can see. We could not believe that could take place. This was not a war zone. This is not in a heated argument. There was no provocation. There were no excuses. But where worshipers were praying in a sacred space, just like this one. And I know 5 years ago, being almost 1,000 kilometers away from Quebec City Mosque, right here, the pain and insecurity reverberated to us here. It demonstrated the lengths hate could go while we could be at our most peaceful moments, trying to connect with our Creator. Here, security was examined and modified. Volunteers were assigned to stand back. I know I have not prayed the same since then from the women's area over there. I would be engaged in prayer, but also vigilant to my surroundings, feeling as if I had an obligation to be on guard for any prospect intruders. And then as I started writing this portion on the Afzal family, my thoughts traveled of the lovely acknowledging smile Madia would always give me. May the family find comfort, peace, and tranquility in Jannatul Firdaus. Ameen. Just reflecting upon the beautiful, giving, peaceful nature of the family, I wanted to be extra careful writing these words for my sisters and brothers, my extended family here, where we are all Londoners. These instances, especially when they're so close to home, trigger us. I realize they're very close friends and family of the Afzal family in London who grieved and still are in disbelief. The Pakistani community here is quite resilient and self-sustaining. The Pakistani community has its own unique practices to maintain the roots through social gatherings, hospitality, and of course, exercise those important traditional aspects of cooking, serving delicious food, wearing the traditional clothes. I have to ask this question, is the shalwar kameez, the dupatta, are they also threatening and hateful? Our skin color and attire have been the objects of attacks. Our sisters who are black and those who wear the hijab have been attacked. Our fellow community members of the Sikh faith who wear visible religious and cultural clothing have been attacked. This takes us down a dark corridor that we cannot imagine exists We felt it when Christchurch Mosque was attacked in March 2019, losing over 50 people. Society flourishes on the positivities, but underneath, there are darkened hearts and minds sometimes. We're not angels, and we possess likes and dislikes. Our dislikes should not become hate that leads to violence. We are finally having the conversations that are necessary, and we're grateful for that. It took shocking, brutal, painful sacrifices by our friends, acquaintances, fellow congregants to arrive here. We are all aware more work should take place. I think that's unanimous. It can only move forward by creating opportunities of engagement by the power holders and participation by those impacted in the community. Surveys have shown that Muslim Canadians describe their sense of belonging as strong and recognize that other cultures have a lot to teach us and that contact is enriching. But Muslims are also worried about discrimination. No single level of government can effectively dismantle Islamophobia in Canada. An integrated government approach is needed, and that is what NCCM, our local organization Hikmah, have been doing by asking municipal, provincial, and federal governments to examine legislation. We are pleased recently to learn of Ottawa's latest commitment to appoint a special representative on combating Islamophobia. We are thankful to the City of London for the action they have taken. We are thankful for the ongoing work on our London Family Act. To conclude, let us move forward more quickly than we have previously acted on necessary actions where hate cannot manifest itself to the levels the Muslim community and other communities have experienced. We are grateful for the work taking place. We thank all people who are conscious of the issues and all allies who stand with our community during these times of need. May safety of all Canadians prevail for all. Amen.
Thank you very much, Sister Zeba. That was a very powerful, very moving speech. And I think you really touched us all. Here in the audience, and I'm sure online as well. It's just really, really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. It takes a lot of courage to share so eloquently and bring out these raw emotions. It takes a lot of courage, and so I really appreciate that from you. These are things that we need to be doing as part of our healing process, part of us coming to terms with what is happening. We don't just hope that eventually things will be fine. This is a catalyst for being fine, inshallah. So thank you for sharing that. After this segment, our esteemed panelist, alhamdulillah, Sheikh Adnan had to excuse himself, and we are very grateful that he joined us, alhamdulillah, on a very busy Saturday for him. After this, we actually have another panel, this time of community members who are sharing their experiences of Islamophobia and sharing how that has impacted them, and more importantly, how do we now take action on a personal level to combat it, to educate people, to stand up for ourselves, to not be shy about who we are, to not hide in the shadows. All of these things, what are the next steps? So this is going to be a panel of community members, inshallah. I'd like to invite them, and I'd like to thank Sister Alia and Sister Zeba for their contributions. Thank you, Jazakumullah khairan. We have Huda Salam, would you like to join us? Great, excellent. Thank you, Huda. And Sister Saima is here with us, yes? I think there was one other person, or are they there? Or Zeba, do you know? Oh, virtually? That's going to be tough. I just disconnected the stream. Well, Zoom is okay going, but sorry, virtual folks. We made the virtual exception for Minister Hussein, right? And I had to like juggle 2 computers and a phone here. So, all right. If you'd like to share virtually, maybe next time. Okay. Yeah, maybe if someone like from the audience like to share the experience with Islamophobia, we have a empty seat. You can join us here if you like to. Yes. My pleasure. What's your name, sister? Okay, perfect. Okay, please join us. Jazakumullah khairan. So I'm gonna start with Sister Saima, since the mic is there. Okay. If Sister Saima, you can just maybe introduce yourself briefly and talk about your experience, inshallah. That'll be wonderful.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Saima. I actually was born and raised in London, so I've been here for a good 35 years. Everyone knows how old I am now. Actually, you know, Islamophobia and our experiences, there's a lot. You know, it's not about can I share my experiences, what experiences should I share? Because there are a lot. Growing up in London, being here my whole life, you know, as was mentioned by the other panelists, sometimes, you know, you hear things in passing. An incident I remember very clearly, actually, is the day that 9/11 happened. I was in high school. I think I was in grade 9 or 10, and it was early in the morning. I finished my first period. I came to the cafeteria, and one of like our classmates, he came up to me and he said, "Your people have attacked us." And I was like, you know, what are you talking about? And, you know, I went into the cafeteria. We had a TV there that the news was playing. And as I watched it, I realized what he was saying, that, you know, Muslims have attacked us. And at the time, you know, I was a kid. I laughed it off. I didn't realize that, you know, letting this go now would foster this hate. And it's funny because this same person, you know, you're on Facebook, you add your classmates and stuff. And I was actually really good friends with this guy's wife who, you know, they got married. They were together in high school. And they've actually, since I started wearing hijab and, you know, sharing more stories online about what's happening to Muslims, they've actually unfriended me and they deleted me as friends off Facebook. And so I didn't realize until another one of our friends shared a poster, and I was like, oh, how come I didn't see this? You know, we're friends. And, you know, I realized they deleted me off Facebook. And, you know, the only reason that I could think of is why they deleted me is because of my post that I have about, you know, what's happening across the world and like all the hate against Muslims. So, I mean, you know, now if I could go back to that time in 2001 and, you know, if that guy said the same thing to me, my response would be completely different. I probably would respond with, you know, it wasn't our people, and explain to him that, you know, this isn't Islam and this and that. Something that I would do now as an adult and, you know, because I've experienced so many things. So to the young people here, you know, don't be afraid. I know it's harder, but just say what you have to say. And the list goes on. I mean, as an adult, when I started wearing hijab, you know, incidents got a lot worse. I remember once I was in Toronto and I was driving and there was like a truck behind me and he was just honking at me, and I was stopped at a red light and I thought, you know, what am I doing wrong? You know, like, am I in the wrong lane? Am I supposed to turn? It was still red. I was like, you know, not doing anything wrong. Why am I being honked at? So I turned and looked, and there was a truck full of grown white males, and they were like giving me the finger and like screaming at me, and I was scared. I started shaking because I was alone. I went for work. I was in Toronto. I was alone, and I quickly right away like locked my doors and just like took off because there was like there were big men, and they were like angry with me, and I was like, what did I do to these guys? I took off because I was scared. And, you know, that's another incident. Another incident, I was working, I'm a nurse, and I was at work one day I work with a lot of elderlies with like people who have dementia, Alzheimer's, and one of my residents who I take care of, every single day at breakfast, he would ask me, "Are you gonna kill me? Will you go to heaven if you kill me?" And I would just like, I'm the charge nurse, I'm in charge of all these people, have to keep it cool. So I'd be like, "No, I'm not gonna kill you." Every single day he would ask me at breakfast, "Are you gonna kill us?" And then I would just answer him. I said, "No, I'm not gonna kill you. I'm not gonna go to heaven if I kill you." And then one day, I asked him, I said, "Are you gonna kill me?" Because he asked me every day. And after that, he never asked me again. He didn't ask me. He smiled at me after that. And so, subhanAllah, like it happens all the time. And especially when you wear a hijab, it's like you're a target, a walking target. They're like, "Oh, there's a Muslim." And very hard to hide it once you wear hijab. I know for the men it's easier because it's harder to tell, are you Muslim, are you not? But for us females, it happens, I guess, more because we're visible. But yeah, I'll leave it there. And I could go on, like I said, there's a lot of it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Those are very, very, very disturbing incidents. And to be honest, I appreciated how you kept your cool, right? Like, I'm not sure if I could keep my cool in the face of that, right? I think this is a very important prophetic characteristic. But I also like how you then eventually ask the guy, "Are you gonna kill me?" Right then, yeah, man. Yeah. 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 You will just speak so people online can hear you. Just pass the mic to her just for a second. Yeah. So after that, like.
I was gonna say that it's not like you can blame it on his dementia or it's Alzheimer's, because the minute that I responded with, "Are you gonna kill me?" he stopped and he didn't ask me again. He started, he's an inappropriate guy where he always says things, but nothing again about Muslims and my attacking.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Zeba. Huda, I was going to ask you to go next, but you've clearly passed on the mic. Okay, all right, no problem. Sorry, sister, if you can please just move the mic closer to you and just state your name and, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Subay.
You got to speak in the mic.
My name is Subay al-Rahman. I don't know if I don't want to talk about my own experience because I think that's personal and it's selfish. And I think this is not about me. And to speak as a whole, I would say there's too many experiences. And because we wear the hijab, it's always, as he has said, we always are the walking targets. And that's just upsetting because I know even in school, sometimes it just feels like everybody's targeting me for literally no reason other than my hijab. And then regardless of whether I do, sometimes I just can't feel like I fit in with everybody else. And I think this is something we need to work out as individuals with ourselves, to accept who we are and love that about ourselves, regardless of whether people think we are good or not. And I have worked on that, and I've used my experience with Islamophobia to build myself for the better and to help others build themselves, hopefully. I also want to say that it's never our fault that people who are not even Muslims decide to act violently, and then we are the ones blamed for it, and we are the ones who have to apologize for it. I wasn't even alive during 9/11, and I am asked one too many times to apologize for something I wasn't even alive when it happened. And that's very un-Islamic. And the problem is I would, but it wasn't me, and it wasn't someone of our religion, because that goes against Islam, and if they're Muslims, they know it goes against Islam, and they will not commit such an act. And I want to say, if we would have to apologize, everybody else would have to apologize to us for the hatred they caused to us and for the pain they brought onto us. And it's not our fault that some people decide to act violent and use Islamic word when they're doing it. And I just want to be clear with my message. I'm not trying to blame anybody, but it's not our fault, and we're not going to apologize for it.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much. Huda?
Okay, this is good?
Sorry?
This is good? Whoa.
That's better.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
You can put it up if you like, or, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Huda. I'm in grade 10. And I've lived in London most of my life. I came when I was like 5 or 6 years old. I was asked here to come to speak about my experiences with Islamophobia. Just like the first sister here mentioned, there's too many to count. One that happened actually very recently was something in school, which is something that we've talked about a lot here. And I think it kind of connects with what Sheikh Adnan was saying earlier. There was a kid in one of my friend's classes who was one of the close friends of Yumna Afzal Arhamha, who was the youngest killed in the June 6th attack. And he was bragging about how his mom dressed up as a Muslim for Halloween. After this happened, my friend obviously freaked out. She didn't say anything because what is she supposed to say in that situation? She's supposed to go tell the principal. She's supposed to go tell her teacher. And then what? What's going to happen after that? It's his mother. That's who he's growing up. That's who's raising him. There's no way you can fix something outside of the school jurisdiction, so that's it. He just gets away with it. We obviously told, we reported it, and you know, he's kept his mouth shut for the most part, but there's been obviously other incidents within it. And it's frustrating because I have classes with him. I have classes with his friends. I walk around with a hijab on my head and he doesn't like me, and I know that he doesn't. And he, on the last day before the 2-week winter break, he came into my classroom. He isn't attending that class, but he came to sit with his friends and was looking at me and laughing. He knows who I am, looking at me and laughing and joking with his friend, like he was some jokester and everyone thought he was funny. It's so frustrating to be in those situations because there's nothing I can do about it. I have to go to school, I have to put a brave face on, and I cannot help anybody else who's in my situation but terrified. I'm not scared of him, but there are other people who are afraid of him. What are they supposed to do? The second is obviously a little bit bigger than that. I was best friends with Yumna Afzal Arhamha, who was obviously the youngest killed in the June 6th attack. I found out the morning of and had to go and live with that. I live with that every day now. I walk the same way that she was walking. I saw her almost every day for 3 years. I talked to her every single day. She was my best friend. How am I supposed to even process that? I'm supposed to grieve while at the same time trying to remember that she was my best friend who was killed because she was Muslim. I'm Muslim. She didn't even wear hijab and I'm wearing hijab. We're all walking targets for no reason. And I think it connects with what Sheikh Adnan was saying because the generation before us was too afraid to stand up. They were. Still are. My generation is too afraid to stand up. Still are. When is that going to change? We don't put ourselves out there. We stay in the shadows. We don't put representation out there for Muslim women to be able to go up in the classroom and have a presentation just in schools, let alone going up in any kind of political standpoint. It doesn't make any sense. At some point, we have to stand up to that because it doesn't correlate with what we are saying here. We keep talking about Islamophobia, keep talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. We're in the same spot we have been since 9/11, and again, just like her, I wasn't born when 9/11 happened. Yet here I am having to apologize for things that I wasn't alive for. That doesn't make any sense. But at some point, we have to stand up. So I think this is the perfect opportunity. The first leader who is up here talking about what we're doing politically. We also have to work as a community we have to support each other. As youth, we can stand up as much as we want, but no one's going to listen to a kid if there is an adult standing behind him. So when someone comes up to me and says that I'm here for you, that's what I want you to be here for. I want you to stand behind me when I'm standing up for something that I believe in. When it's something as big as this, I'm going to need your support standing behind me, not hiding in the shadows. Yeah, that's it.
MashaAllah, that was awesome. Thank you very much for sharing that. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. I'm going to ask you, I think, all of three of you are Muslim women. You faced the worst of it. I, as a man, don't face the same thing. I can easily hide in the shadows, and it's cowardly, right? It's something that we can, unfortunately, we think that hiding in the shadows is and not being proud of who we are, not being comfortable with who we are, is okay, right? It's a very, very difficult thing. I don't have any organized thoughts, but listening to you all share your experiences, this is so deflating. Not in the sense of we're despairing. We don't despair. This is, as Muslims, this is what we do. We are always hopeful in Allah's mercy. We always trust that Allah has a plan. We always know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has got us. He will make sure that we'll be okay. وَالَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا فَوْقَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. If not in this world, we know in the next life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us our due right and give us that high status. But even in this life, we know that He's got us. So I'm not talking about it from a despair perspective. I'm talking about it more from just, it's very hard to hear that. And I think that's the least that anybody can do, whether you are a Muslim or not, whether you are a Muslim woman or a Muslim man, whatever, or whoever you may be, right? I think that's the least that you can do. Have that empathy for the struggles of the other person. And don't belittle or cheapen their struggle, or somehow blame them for the problems that they find themselves in. I remember very clearly that the night the mosque shooting happened in Quebec City, I remember very clearly there was a news report that this was a Muslim who did this. And the next day, I was listening to the radio, and the questioner, the radio host asked this question: was this community integrated into this? Was the Muslim community, or the mosque community, were they integrated into the larger city? Right? You are blaming the person who got shot dead for their death. That's what you're doing. That's what it's come down to. You're blaming the dead for dying, for being shot. That was so just made me very angry. Made me very angry. Even after what happened with the Afzal family, there was a reporter that came from Montreal, and she asked me this question: is the Muslim community integrated here? And I swear to God, I was about to lose my mind on her, right? But alhamdulillah, I kept my cool, just and I very pointedly asked her, are you blaming them for being run over by a pickup truck and dying in the street? What's wrong with you? So this cheapening of our lives, this blaming us for who we are. You are the source of your problem. You are the source of your problem. This is shocking. I don't like to read YouTube comments, right? It's a dark place. It's a dark place. But I was reading the comment that someone made on the vigil, right? And it's such, those are comments made by dark, empty people. Dark, empty people. There's nothing at this point, even if your enemy was murdered in this way, you have the basic human decency to have sympathy and empathy for them in their moment of grief. That's basic humanity. What happens when you are even below that? Saima, please, go ahead.
Speaking about comments on, posts, I think a lot of us, we like to sometimes read comments, and, when the visual happened, the comments on like CBC, CTV, all of the posts, like it was shocking to see the amount of comments of people doing exactly what Sh Aarij is saying, blaming the victims. Oh, they must not have done this. Oh, they shouldn't do this. And, you're saying that these people are dark for making those comments. There were in the hundreds. And so many times when I would read these comments, I would go on their profiles. I was like, who are these people? Like, who's saying this? And they're Londoners, people in London who, how can you even, somebody's walking down the street, they get run down by a truck deliberately, and then how can you even, it doesn't matter how much you hate these people, it could be your enemy. You should have something in your heart to feel something. And then to sit there, and then you go on these people's profiles and, they look like normal people. They're older people, they're young people, they're people with families, they're people, like the common theme is they're all white. But there's so many, it's shocking, it's mind-boggling to see these comments and in the hundreds, and they keep going and they're arguing it. Like if you say something, they'll argue their point that no, they deserved it. They're Muslims, they're killers, they're this, they're this. Like it's like seriously, like it's just, subhanAllah. Like you would think that it's dark, evil people saying these things, but it's not. It's the common folks that you see every single day. It's the moms and dads. It's this lady who dressed up for Halloween. It's normal people that we see every day, all day. And that's the scariest part. Like that's the most scary part because, they're amongst us. And you would think that by now, this mosque has been here for over 60 years. You would think by now that the people around would know that Muslims are not evil, that Muslims are not killers, that Muslims are not gonna, attack you while you are worshiping in your church. You are safe from the hands of Muslims. But they don't. They think we're killers. They're still, after us, and that's the scariest part.
It's a very, very, very sad reality that we have to face. But as I said, we don't despair. As believers, we don't carry that in our hearts. That's not the way we are. We are by default people who say Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal. We say Alhamdulillah in good times, all praises for Allah in good times. We say all praises is for Allah in bad times. This is how our Prophet ﷺ taught us. This is the characteristic of optimism. That's how we are supposed to be as believers. So that never goes away. And, it's a reminder for us. But, I'd like to conclude on like a positive note, right? We don't want to, leave everybody crying and angry and someone goes and, gets angry or gets very sad by what they have heard. It's good that you feel that, right? But I think it's always nice to end on a positive note, right? So maybe I can ask you something to share something positive, a positive experience. I'll start. My neighbor, lady who lives next door to me, a very, very good family. We're so blessed to have neighbors like them. Her husband and her kids are, we're very blessed to have neighbors like that. SubhanAllah, very interesting. After the Afzal family situation, I was not home a lot. Like I was just, coming here and there, and I didn't get to see them, my neighbors that frequently in that week. And then just randomly, I just ran into her. I was just like on the driveway, and she was backing out. And then, she stopped her car, and she was like legit crying, like just as she started speaking to me. It wasn't like a planned meeting. It was just completely randomly. I was backing into the driveway, she was backing out, and she stopped and just cried so much. And I felt that her sharing our pain, that made me feel good, right? It made me feel that people cared for us, cared for our suffering. And that's really what, that's really what we can expect of people, that care for our suffering, care for our pain. Don't don't enjoy it, right? Don't enjoy it. And if you do enjoy it, hey, what does that say about you, right? Please.
Also with like the family and stuff, for the walkout we had afterwards, there were so many people, and I feel like that gave me a lot of hope. The amount of people that showed up, the amount of people that decided this is important, we need to step up, that was very beautiful, very heartwarming. I don't think it's a good thing to find hope in violence, but it was a lot of hope because of the amount of people who decided to show up and decide this is wrong, and we stepped up, and we know this is wrong, and we're sorry that it happened. And the amount of people that apologized to me, the amount of people who told me like, this is not us, this is not what's supposed to happen, the amount of people who decided, we're sorry that happened, we're sorry that you have to live in fear, the amount of people who stepped with us, stood with us, was very much overwhelming, and that was great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Huda?
Okay, so it's good? Okay. I want to say as humans, especially as a hijabi girl, hijabi woman, I always think of the worst, unfortunately. I think of the worst things first, and like we were saying when we were reading the comments online, it's so annoying having to read those things and not only seeing the things, but then you see people are liking them. They're not even commenting, but they're liking it. They're liking the comments, and then other people will post the comments or repost it and then say something even worse. It's awful. But I think that we also have to see the positive support that we had online. I remember one experience for online was I did an interview for the Globe and Mail, and one of my friends saw it and she reposted it, and then I had random follow requests on Instagram of people that I knew from my school. We weren't friends, but I knew them. And I would go to their stories and I'd see that they reposted me. They're not Muslim. They don't know me. We've never talked ever. They know I'm in their class, and they reposted it, and they send really heartfelt messages. And then I would accept them. And before I even get a chance to say thank you for saying that, they would respond to my story and say, I'm so sorry that this has happened to you. And I'm so sorry that, you had to lose a friend like that. And I'm so sorry this happened to your community. If you ever need anything, reach out, all this, all that. And I think that's really important to look at. Another one that really stuck out for me was one time me and my mom were at Michael's. And a lot of the excuses that I'm getting a lot of the time is generation. Oh, they live in a generation, they're older, they don't understand. And I get that sometimes, but I'm tired of using excuses. I'm tired of giving racist excuses to be hateful and spread hateful messages for no reason, and to continue that generation after generation. So me and my mom were in Michael's, and this woman is in the same aisle as us. And I can tell she's staring, and I get stares all the time, so for me it was like normal. And she's just staring at me, and she's walking really closely up to me, and she's just like slowly, until she's like right in front of me and my mom, practically blocking where we're looking in the aisle. And so we look over and we're like, oh, sorry, and we move back to see if she wanted to go in front of us. And she goes, are you guys Muslim? And I said, we identify as Muslim. And she goes, I just want to say I'm so sorry about what happened here in London. That doesn't represent my people, doesn't represent who I am, and I'm so sorry that representation has to go out there like that. She didn't know who I was. She probably doesn't know what the purple and green ribbon that I wear every day means. She doesn't know me, but she came up to me in her own time and said, I'm so sorry for what happened. And I don't know, for some reason that one really, really stuck with me.
Awesome, thank you for sharing that with us. Sister Saima?
I could just repeat like what two lovely ladies have said. The visual, the walk, the the amount of people that came out, I mean, the support, subhanAllah, it was amazing. And just to see that, and I know the deaths of the family was very tragic. You know, we wish that it never happens to anyone. But subhanAllah, that death brought the community, the London community together, the Canadian community together. The way Canada and the world woke up from this, we've never seen that with the previous attacks. Like, you know, the Quebec shooting did happen 5 years ago. It did not get the same coverage, the same, you know, global outcry that this did. So I think that is a very positive thing that we can look at, that hopefully, inshallah, you know, the political leaders have opened their ears. They're realizing that this is something important to Muslims. It's a problem for Muslims, and it needs to be, you know, addressed. And so that I think that's itself is a very positive thing.
Jazakallah khair. And thank you very much, Sister Saima, Sister Huda. Sorry, I forgot your name. Sobia? Sophia. Okay, thank you, Sister Sophia. Thank you all for coming out and sharing your experiences. This really means a lot to us. Thank you all for coming in person on a very cold Saturday afternoon. Alhamdulillah, to attend this program. I hope it was beneficial. Thank you to the folks who came online, Minister Hussein and his team, for making their time and making themselves available. MP Ariel Kiabaga, MP Peter Fragasqueros, they've been online the whole time, so we appreciate them as well. And everybody else who attended, we would love to have you again in events like this, talk about these things. And we pray to Allah, right, that there's no more, right? No more shootings, no more nationally televised funerals, no more vigils, no more dates that we mark and commemorate. We just want peace, right? We want to live peacefully. We want to see everybody else live peacefully. And that, inshallah, is what we hope and pray for. We ask Allah to keep everybody safe. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to, bring our hearts together. Ameen, ameen, ameen. And inshallah, that will end. Maghrib is just upon us, so we'll be praying Maghrib. Jazakumullah khair, everybody. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.